Fasten your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Chrissie is hilarious.
Chrissie, have you ever heard of the comedian Basha K. Ali?
No, that sounds like something you yell out before you blow up a plane.
Basha K. Ali!
30 seconds remaining.
But you know what, good to say I dabbled in stand-up or something. I have no disrespect for you at all.
I was very confused by the title, Everything Everywhere All at Once, because that's also what we call it when Ash takes off his shirt.
I shouldn't be up here. I should be in school on the other side of the ocean.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Chrissie Mayr Podcast. We're all over the place. iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, Rumble, Rockfin, wherever they'll have us. Twitter, Apple Broadcast, anywhere and everywhere. Before I bring in our fabulous guest, I have a couple of comedy shows to promote. Guys, I will be in Texas next week. I'll be headlining in Austin at Roscoe's Comedy Club Wednesday, August 9th, 10 o'clock show. Get your tickets now. Tickets are moving for this show. Lila Hart will be featuring for me. Then I'll be at the Anime Matsuri convention Thursday through Sunday of that week. Stop by. I will have a Simpcast panel and booth. Be hanging out with a lot of other YouTubers you may know and love. Then I'm headlining in Houston Friday, August 11th at The Secret Group. Nice early show at 7 o'clock. Lila Hart will be featuring for me there as well. Then I'll be heading to Los Angeles in early September, the 8th and 9th. I'll be at the Pineapple Hill Saloon. Tickets just went on sale for these shows today, 9 o'clock Friday and Saturday. So get your tickets now for this LA show. Then I'm doing a comedy fundraiser to benefit the Yorktown Diamond Thistle Lodge, Saturday, September 23rd. Then I'll be back in Long Island at the Brokerage in October. I'll be in Tampa, Florida in December, back to San Diego in March. So I'm putting together quite the fall and 2024 schedule. So get your tickets now at ChrissieMayr.com, please, and thank you. I love doing stand-up. Can't wait to visit you in a city near you. And as always, tag me, tag the venues that are near you, that are based, that that are not super lefty, that would have me perform. Without further ado, I'm going to bring in our guest. I've had him on the podcast before, and gosh, I haven't seen him since maybe 2021. We were at the same convention, The Truth About Cancer, out in Nashville. So it's been a minute. He's a political icon. He's a New York Times best-selling author, a Trump loyalist, a veteran GOP operative. And you can catch him. God, he's doing so many shows. You can catch him at the stonezone.live, 5 p.m. Eastern, WABCradio.com, Sundays, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern. He's everywhere, but he's here with us today. Mr. Roger Stone, welcome. Welcome back.
Chrissie, it's great. What a long, strange road it's been, huh?
Yes. Woo! I feel like so much has happened since you were last on the show. So much has happened just this week. So much has happened just today.
Yeah. Well, I urge people to tune in to my daily show, the stonezone.live. If you're indicted, you're invited. General Michael Flynn, Paul Manafort, many other notorious America firsters. We are, of course, persecuted. And then when I saw your great lineup of where you're going to perform, like, Chrissie, if you need somebody to open for you.
Actually, I would love that. I would love for us to go on the road together. I may have to up my accommodations. But that, yeah, I think that would make a great team. And yeah, just get some martinis, get a martini mixer on the tour bus.
Speaking of, cheers.
Wow. Cheers.
It's been quite a day, to say the least.
Is that a dirty martini? Yeah, I see the olives.
It is so good. So here's the martini recipe, right?
Okay.
I'm with former President Richard Nixon. at his place in Saddle River, New Jersey. And he says, well, did you like a silver bullet? I said, of course, Mr. President, I'd love that. Here's the recipe. He takes a bottle of olives. He pours out the juice. He fills it with water. He shakes it up. He pours out the water. Now he fills that with dry vermouth, puts it in the refrigerator. Takes a couple glasses, splashes them in some water, puts it in the freezer. Then he takes a silver martini shaker. He fixes it. He fills it with a mixture of ice cubes and crushed ice. Pours in the vodka. Then he mixes it very vigorously. And he says, now, when you pour this, if there are not tiny shards of ice on the surface of martini, well, it means that you effed it up. He then takes 2 olives out of the bottle, throws them in the martini glass, the chilled martini glass, pours in the mixture, and it is sublime. Nixon's silver bullet. And I say to him, wow, Mr. President, this is really good. He says, yeah, I got the recipe from Winston Churchill. How cool is that?
Wow. Okay, that's amazing. I had a Winston Churchill quote from in my high school yearbook. Like, it was my senior quote, and I did it to try to seem like smarter than I was. So that's kind of amazing that you actually have Winston Churchill's martini recipe there.
Yeah, the two coolest Churchill quotes is he's talking to Lady Astor. And now Churchill was a heavy drinker, so he would have 2 or 3 martinis before dinner. Then he would have an entire bottle of champagne with dinner.
Oh my God.
A bottle of brandy after dinner. And then he would go right for several hours. So he had an extraordinary capacity. And Lady Astor, who was a major socialite and royalty, said to him, Sir Winston, you are drunk. And he said, yes, madam, I am drunk. However, tomorrow morning I shall be sober. You, on the other hand, he said, are ugly. And then she said, Sir Winston, if I were your wife, I would poison you. And he said, yes, madam, if you were my wife, I would swallow it.
Oh my God. I feel like people had more fun with insults back in the day. People are too careful now. I think we need to bring back savage insults. I think that's fun.
Well, there's, of course, nobody better at this than Donald J. Trump. I mean, he is the king of the insult. Little Marco, lying Ted Cruz. Now, of course, it's deranged Jack Smith. He continually calls him deranged Jack Smith, which is pretty gutsy at this point. But what we see today, I think, particularly today and over the last week, is a strategy of distraction. Oh, cocaine was found in the White House. Oh, we found evidence of a wire of $5 million from Ukraine to Hunter Biden. Oh, somebody killed the Obama's chef, but we can't identify who was on the other paddleboard. What do? Arrest Donald Trump. That's the obvious answer. I mean, it's such an obvious strategy of, oh, look at that. No, look over there. Look over there at Donald Trump. I mean, it's so obvious. You'd have to be a dunce not to see it.
It's shocking to everybody just how quickly they dropped the cocaine mystery from the White House. This should be the most secure building in our country. You shouldn't be able to get in and out of the building without, I feel like, a thorough pat down. And a few people I've spoken with said, yeah, the only type of person that would be able to get through without a pat down would be somebody in the family.
Where are the security cameras? In other words, this is one of the most secure places on earth. Every square inch of it is under a security camera, unless, of course, the security cameras just happen to be not working like they were on the Saturday that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. I mean, these people are so transparent. And then here, I love this. This is a New York Post story today regarding the tragic death of the Obama's chef. Now, I'm not laughing about some poor guy's death. I mean, that's never a funny thing, but this is my favorite line. It says that there was a second staffer with him, an Obama staffer, name undisclosed, but we've determined it was a woman, no name. However, The 45-year-old's death doesn't appear to be suspicious based on evidence collected in the now closed investigation.
That
So-
was quick.
So what's amazing is this story, this tragic accident took place on July 23rd, and then it became a big story on July 24th. And 9 days later, they've closed the investigation. At first they told us that Obama declined to be interviewed and by the police and declined to make a statement. Then they told us the Obamas weren't on Martha's Vineyard. Then they changed that, said, oh no, well, they were on Martha's Vineyard, but they weren't at home. Then we were told that the call to the police came from several houses down from the Obamas compound. Then they said, no, that's not right. It actually came from the Obamas compound. But when you go to the police file, that part of the form is blank, so you don't know who it was who called the cops. They don't tell you that. Now they tell us that there was a second person, and it was a woman, but they don't disclose the woman's name, nor is it evident in the police record. Now, here's what people don't know. The Edgartown, Massachusetts police are the same police who covered it up when Ted Kennedy drove the car off the bridge, and the woman, unfortunately, who was an intern that he was probably just giving a ride home or something, tragically drowned in the car. So it's the exact same police department. This is now the second presidential aspirant that they're seeking to cover up for, because as I have said now for several months, probably 6 months, I still believe they're going to give Joe Biden the hook. I think his time on the stage is extraordinarily limited between the impact of his policies, record gasoline prices, record grocery prices, food shortages, ravaging inflation, a drug pandemic, a drug epidemic, a crime epidemic. Plus, we have 370,000 homeless veterans, but we're shipping $1 billion over to Zelensky so that he and his gay dance troupe can skim the graft off the top. And now you add to that his inability to perform even the most basic functions. He can't string together a sentence. He looks like he's lost. He shakes hands with invisible people that don't exist. He falls down. You got to love that part.
Record falling down, Roger. Record falling downstairs, upstairs, flat surfaces are an issue.
And then, he's never discussed Hunter's business with him. That changed to, well, he's not in business with Hunter. And that changed to, he's never met with any Hunter's partners or foreign business associates. And then that changed to, well, he did talk to them, but it was just to say hi and how's the weather? That's like saying, well, Monica Lewinsky came into the Oval Office just to discuss the weather with Bill Clinton. I mean, it's an absurdity.
Monica Lewinsky just came into the Oval Office to test out her new knee pads with the president. Yes.
And then, of course, they've still got these Kamala Harris official campaign knee pads left over from the last campaign. They don't know what to do with those.
Just rebrand them.
So I really do think, to be half serious here for a second, that just before the filing deadline, which comes up in December for the various Democratic primaries and caucuses, they're going to announce that Joe, because of his poor health and the fact that he can't remember where he is, he's not going to run again. Kamala will not be a candidate. She's going to be a Supreme Court justice because that's what they're going to promise her. And I still believe that Michelle Obama was slated to be their candidate for president.
Wow.
And she's on the same trajectory as her husband, meaning he had a nonprofit organization to do voter registration. That's what she's now doing. He wrote 2 totally fugazi biographies in which he falsified his entire past. She's now written 2 biographies. Oh, I grew up poor on the south side of Chicago. No, you didn't. You grew up wealthy, well-to-do in one of the tonier suburbs. But she's reinventing her entire backstory to try to make herself more sympathetic. And I honestly believe that that's going to be their candidate.
Wow, it sounds kind of similar with how they shaped AOC. Like, she was from Westchester, I think, and then they kind of wanted to shape her out to be just kind of like an ordinary girl who could turn on and off an accent, I guess, depending where she was, similar to what Kamala does. It's just ridiculous. And that's an interesting prediction that they will run, Michelle, because there are some people who were saying, maybe Obama will run again. Maybe he's getting himself ready. But who knows? If he's back in the White House, he's going to have to get a chef who is a much better swimmer because suspiciously, so Tafari Campbell is the Obama chef who died last weekend. And he's a chef that, they knew from the White House. And then when he left the White House, they said, oh, come stay with us. So that they brought him to to work for them privately in 2017. Very similar drowning death to another White House chef who was in the White House from 94 to 2005 named Walter Scheib. Also had a very sketchy drowning incident. And everything around this Tafari Campbell story is so suspect. Why was he there without his wife or children? Why was he there? There'd be no reason for the chef to be on the premises if the Obamas are gone. No one, who was he cooking for? Why would he be randomly there by himself, paddleboarding? And a few folks have actually checked Tafari's Instagram, and they were able to prove that he's actually a very strong swimmer.
Yep.
So much of this is not.
Plus, why couldn't you just grab the paddleboard floats? Why, if you were in distress, why wouldn't you just grab the paddleboard? So the moral of the story, Chrissy, is if Joe Biden offers your husband a job as a chef, I would strongly urge him to turn it down.
Yeah. There's a lot of people who are saying maybe he saw something, heard something, he knew too much. It's really interesting, and it seems like the level of vague details would not be tolerated with anybody else but the Bidens, the Obamas. Things can just, no longer trend, and everyone just has to move on. Oh, don't worry about the Coke in the White House. Oh, don't worry about the chef's death. Oh, don't worry about anything going on with Hunter. I want to know your thoughts on, because it seems like Trump is he's getting indicted left and right. Do you think this is mostly just to, wear down his resources? Because I believe the Save America PAC has spent over $40 million just on legal fees since all this began. So do you think they're just trying to run him out of money, or do you think there's any other reason behind this?
Well, first of all, I think that the expenditure of PAC funds to defend yourself so that you're able to be a candidate. Let's recognize that the purpose of all this lawfare is to make him legally ineligible to run for president. And I really think because of the House oversight hearings that exposed Hunter and Joe and Jim Biden and the rest of the Biden crime family for extortion, bribery, money laundering, influence peddling, illegal lobbying, and let's just put it out there, treason, multi-million-dollar wires from Ukraine, Russia, China, Romania. Remember in the debate when Donald Trump said to Joe Biden, you and your son took $3.7 million from the wife of the mayor of Moscow, and Joe Biden said, that's a lie. You're a liar. Well, Trump was actually wrong. It was $40 million, 3.7. So Trump was absolutely right. So the expenditure of PAC funds to ensure that Trump is able to legally be a candidate, I think is a legitimate expenditure of money. What I mean by that is I think that Jack Smith moved today prematurely, probably didn't have his entire package of indictments ready, but they had to block out the news of Hunter Biden. And the only way they can do that is this strategy. Oh, look over there at Donald Trump. So I don't know that we have seen the end of the federal indictments against Trump. You saw this in the documents case where they issued a superseding indictment. It brought additional charges against a new guy who's a maintenance man at Mar-a-Lago, plus additional charges against Trump's valet, Walt Nauta, who's a very nice fellow, by the way. I've now met him twice actually. But here's the point. If they charge Trump, and if he were to be convicted, that's a giant if, of seditious conspiracy in connection with the riot at the Capitol, then he would be constitutionally ineligible to be on the ballot as a candidate. Now, there's a lot of ifs there, but I think that is their intention. In other words, they know they can't beat him in a free, fair, honest, transparent election. They know that. So they need to figure out some way to eliminate him, which is what I think they are seeking to do. And just because these charges were filed today, that doesn't necessarily mean that they won't come back and file additional charges against him. The irony of this is it's totally counterintuitive. Every time they charge him, he raises $10 million more. He goes up another 10 points in the polls. It's the exact opposite of what they have planned. It's the exact opposite of what you might reasonably expect.
I wonder if at first the indictments were to sway the American people off of him, like, well, he's got too much baggage, he's got too many legal battles. But now it does seem, he gains more and more points in the polls. He raises more and more money each time. So maybe they're kind of shifting gears to be like, well, let's just make it so he can't run, because we're not gonna sway the American people at this point. They just they kind of see it now. I think a lot of people really see that it's really just the machine, the elite against him. And do you think he has any plans to ever participate in any debates? Do you feel like he doesn't need to at this point? He's doing so well.
Look, I think he probably preserves the option of a future debate, but at this point, it's all downside and no upside. When you're leading by 40 or 45 points, even if it's 35 points, but I think it's closer to 40, both in the early primary and caucus states and nationally, there's only one place to go, and that's down. Why would you give any of these 6 people running against you a free shot? Ron DeSanctimonious definitely needs an opening. Why give him one? So you just go to this debate. Chris Christie, this guy needs to run, not for president. He just needs to run.
Just around a track. Yeah.
But, Christie heard that there are free hors d'oeuvres before every one of these debates. So I think that's what he's there for. But why would you give that guy a free shot at you? It makes no sense at all. So Trump, I think, put this in perspective yesterday when he said, sure, let them have a debate. I consider it like an audition in terms of who I might select for vice president. And I think that is the way to go for it. I can't see any circumstance under which Trump benefits. He only elevates his challengers by agreeing to debate with them, at least at this point. Now, it would be different if this were a horse race, but it's not a horse race. And somehow Ron DeSantis has burned through tens of millions of dollars, and he's actually moving backwards. I mean, it now appears, it is true in several states, Vivek Ramaswamy, who hasn't spent any money on media, but has kind of shined in these public forums, is actually pulling ahead of him. Wow.
Why do you think that is? I'm shocked that Ron isn't doing better. I figured everyone was so in love with him, and everybody from Florida was so proud of the job he was doing.
The people who like him are the people who have never met him. In other words, I think that there's a certain likability factor that's necessary in politics, and there's just nothing likable or charming or regular about Ron. He's very stilted. He's very stiff. He's very famous in Florida for wearing earbuds when he's not listening to anything to avoid human contact. I mean, I think maybe he's an introvert in an extrovert's business. Maybe he's on the spectrum. Maybe he's a mutant from outer space. I don't know. But he's got no personality. And I honestly think at 42 years old, he should have waited. I mean, he just won a big victory here. I voted for him 3 times in the primary, in his last election that he won only through the tweeted endorsement of Donald Trump, and then in his reelection. But here in Florida, we have a lot of things going on. We have, first of all, an insurance crisis. So if you had your house completely destroyed in the hurricane, or let's say you just lost the entire roof, but either way, if your home insurance company, which by the way has just had a giant increase in your premium costs, offers you pennies on the dollar, not nearly what it would cost to replace your home or your roof, you can no longer sue them because Ron DeSantis signed a bill after taking a $4.5 million payoff from the home insurance companies in which you're prohibited from suing them.
Wow.
Florida Power and Light, which is the predominant utility, we just got a 22% increase in our electricity bills. And the regulators who work for Ron DeSantis just rubber stamped this. But maybe that's because Ron DeSantis took $9.5 million from Florida Power and Light and their subsidiaries. So, I mean, it just kind of goes on and on. Let's say that you have a motorcycle. This is one of the few states where you're not required to wear a helmet. But whether you're wearing a helmet or whether you're not wearing a helmet, if you're riding your motorcycle and you're hit by a motorist, the motorist hits you, you cannot sue the motorist. It is automatically your fault for riding a motorcycle. This is in recent legislation signed again by Ron DeSantis. We have a malaria outbreak. That's because they
and leprosy too. I heard there's
amazing
somehow leprosy in Florida.
I thought that went out with the Bible. In all honesty, I didn't know leprosy was still around. Just very close to where I am here in South Florida, we learned that they dumped 15 million gallons of raw sewage into the beach. So that whole area is now closed. So I guess my point is, if you want to be president, you should first do the job you were elected to do here. In other words, he was doing pretty good, but I can tell you right here in Broward County, they're right back to teaching critical race theory in the schools. The governor signed an executive order that theoretically is supposed to prevent that, but in the 7 largest school districts in the state, with 3.7 million school kids, they're right back at it, pushing this, race and gender dogma that is nonsense. It was a great pre-election campaign pledge, but the governor's MIA. He's in New Hampshire today. I read the story this morning about the $15 million of raw sewage being dumped into the beach roughly a mile from here. And there's nobody home. In other words, there's no one running the show.
So it sounds like what you're saying is Ron has begun to become compromised, and it seems like perhaps he's focusing more on his presidential run than doing his job in Florida. That's disappointing.
Well, here's the prediction I would make to you. Remember, he's term limited, so he can't run again. He will be finished as governor in 2026. There is no U.S. Senate seat available. Marco Rubio's seat is the next seat on the ballot. That's in 2028. Marco Rubio is not an old guy. There's no particular expectation that he would retire. Ron is going to be out of office in 2026. Now, he went from being worth $319,000 when he ran for governor. He and his wife are now worth $1.6 million. That's because he took an advance from HarperCollins, which is the publishing company owned by Rupert Murdoch, which is part of the same corporation that owns Fox News. Now, here's how book advances work. We pay you in advance against the sale of your book. Then we go out and sell your book. If we make our money back, great. But I can just tell you, I've written 5 bestsellers. You never sell $1.6 million worth of books anymore, any book. If he sells $100,000 worth of books, that would be technically a huge success in the book world. So the payment to Ron and his wife for $1.6 million is essentially a bribe. It's essentially an inducement to run for president, and there's no return. So if they now turn around and they only sell $100,000, let's say, worth of Ron's book, Ron does not have to refund $1.5 million. He gets to keep it. So the governor has become a millionaire. Here's my prediction. At the end of his second 4-year term, which would be 2026, his wife, Casey DeSantis, who's far more popular than he is here in Florida and I think across the country, will be a candidate for governor.
Wow. And by then she'll have a lot of, like clothes that she can wear that she's developed over her time being Ron's wife. Yeah, she'll have a whole wardrobe ready to go. That's an interesting prediction.
Well, there's a precedent for this. George Wallace was the governor of Alabama. He nursed presidential ambitions. When state law prohibited him from running it for another term, his wife, Lurleen Wallace, ran and was elected. She was actually quite popular. Everybody knew he was really running the state. She was out cutting the ribbons. Now, I do think criticizing a candidate's wife is probably a bad idea. And she's much more likable than Ron. She's much more articulate than Ron. She tends to be somewhat more normal than Ron. But I also saw that his unfavorable ratings here in Florida are creeping up. His unfavorable rating, which was in single digits, is now around 25 and rising. That's because the state has all of these problems. We have rising crime. We have the whole fentanyl thing that's hitting the entire country. We have the insurance crisis. We have the malaria crisis. We have a utility crisis. So, I think he'd be smart to stick to his knitting. The problem here is I don't see how he comfortably gets out of this. He needs to find some way to comfortably back down, pardon the expression, because he's about to get his ass kicked by Donald Trump.
What about all the goodwill that DeSantis had from, how he dealt with Disney? Do you think that's forgotten?
I think it's dissipated because I think people have lost sight of about what the original fight was about. Ironically, by the way, the reason I decided that I did want to do your show is I saw my good friend Laura Loomer on the show.
Oh, Laura, she's great. Yeah.
And I love her. And she's agreed, by the way, I'm going to freeze some of my seed and she's going to carry my child. So we can create another warrior. And we already decided that the child's name would be Ronald. So Donald for Donald Trump, Ronald for Ronald Reagan, Ronald Loomer Stone.
Wow, that sounds like an excellent password too. And I noticed the two of you were both in Florida recently for a Trump event. I was just looking at your Twitter. Yeah, it was in the Villages in Florida.
So she is great. And I think she's got a great service, and she's a great investigative reporter. But she has really been, I think, taking the point on the fact that Ron was going to run. So 6 months ago, she and I would say in our Twitter feeds that Ron DeSantis was going to run for governor. And people got very angry at it. He's going to run for president, pardon me. People get very angry at us. He's not running for president. Why are you dividing the movement? Stop saying that. He's not running. I thought he was running all the way back to 2020. And then in the debate in the last election, when he's asked point blank in the middle of the debate by Charlie Crist, of all people, our former governor here, this is one of my favorite jokes. A Democrat, a Republican, and an independent walk into a bar, and the bartender says, "Hi, Charlie." In any event, Charlie Crist says to him point blank, "Governor, will you pledge right here tonight that if you're reelected, you'll fulfill the entire 4 years of your next term?" And Ron freezes like a deer in the headlights. I knew at that instant he was going to backstab Trump. I knew that he was going to run. And I think people who don't live in Florida need to know this history. In 2018, Ron was running for governor. He was a congressman. He was a rather undistinguished congressman with a ill-fitting suit and a bad haircut that no one ever heard of. He was getting about 7% in the polls. Every single Republican county chairman in the state, that's 67 counties, had endorsed Adam Putnam, who kind of looks like Opie from the Andy Griffith show, who was the state agriculture commissioner, former congressman, not a bad fellow. Every single Republican state legislator in the state legislature, including the Senate president and the Speaker of the House, every Republican in the congressional delegation, with the exception of Matt Gaetz, had all endorsed Adam Putnam. Putnam was leading 49-7. 49-7. And Ron's campaign was broke, out of money. And then Matt Gaetz, friend of mine, convinced Donald Trump to endorse Ron DeSantis. And it was like a thermonuclear explosion. I mean, DeSantis's candidacy took off. He won the primary going away. But given the fact that he is charismatically challenged, let's say, and the fact that he'd been in Congress and didn't really have much of a grounding in state issues, The Democrat candidate, Andrew Gillum, later revealed to be a degenerate crackhead, really did beat him in 2 debates. Ron did not do well in the debates, but Donald Trump changed his schedule to come to Florida 3 times in the last 2 weeks of the 2018 campaign and drag Ron DeSantis' sorry ass across the finish line, which is why I've said from the beginning, his running now when he's 42 years old is an act of personal treachery. It's a backstabbing of epic proportions.
Wow.
What all he needed to do was wait, loyally support Donald Trump, continue to cultivate his record as an America First Republican, and he could have walked into the nomination in 2028. I think not only do I think he's going to lose this race, but I think he's done permanent damage to his brand. What I mean by that is Trump has an ability to reach beyond Republicans. There are people out there who you can call them Trumplicrats or Trumplicans, but they're not Republicans. They are people who didn't vote before, or they're people who used to vote and they stopped voting because they saw how epically corrupt the whole system is. They will vote for Donald Trump because he's the ultimate insurgent, the ultimate outsider. And they liked Ron DeSantis. They liked him, past tense. They now see him as a backstabbing traitor, and they will never vote for him. And he's turned those voters off, and those are the voters you need in a general election. That's why, regardless of what they say, Trump is a stronger general election candidate than Ron DeSantis.
And if he had waited, he would have been, 47 on his first presidential run, which is plenty young. And I definitely feel like it's a little bit of a threat to split and divide the voters. I hope ultimately, I was curious to hear what Ron had to say. I was like, this is gonna be interesting. Let's see how this is gonna pan out. But ultimately, I'm like, nah, Trump. We still have to fight the establishment. And I'm wondering. It seemed like a lot of his base that had a problem with how he dealt with warp speed and the vaccines. I don't know. Do you feel like he's trying to pivot away from how he handled that? Do you feel like that's a moot point? Do you feel like that is something voters can't forgive him for?
Look, I don't. I'm unvaccinated, and I'm not a big fan of Dr. Fauci. But the real problem here is Ron DeSantis' record on COVID-19 is essentially identical to Donald Trump's. He's trying to reinvent history. In the county where I live, he shut down the restaurants and the beaches, and he left them shut longer than Donald Trump wanted them shut. He appointed the mayor of Palm Beach, who had something called the COVID-19 Compliance Task Force, which Ron DeSantis approved. These are like jackbooted Nazis going around terrorizing business members, terrorizing citizens. They set up a snitch line. Can you believe this? So if you didn't like the McGillicuddies who live across the street, you could call anonymously and tip in that they're not wearing their masks, and they'd go over and bust them.
They had something similar in New York too. That's why they started making those Cuomo window stickers.
Exactly. So this guy, whose name is David Kerner, liberal Democrat, it's amazing, Chrissy. He endorses Ron DeSantis 2 weeks before the election. Then immediately after the election, he's appointed the head of the state Department of Motor Vehicles. And the problem with that is that gives him a backdoor to the voting lists here in Florida. So if he says, well, I would have fired Fauci, never mind that. Why'd you hire this guy? Why did you hire him? He is every bit as bad as Fauci. So the truth is Ron DeSantis' record, I know all of his little DeSantoid bots on Twitter foaming in the mouth right now. I don't really care. His record is really essentially the same as President Trump's. Trump never favored mandatory vaccinations. It is not in Trump's makeup to say, well, maybe I was conned by Fauci or BRICS. But the president, I think, has moved on. He built the most vibrant, robust economy in our history, not once, but twice, because we came roaring back to a record stock market even after COVID. And for DeSantis to say, well, I would have done things differently. No, at the time you did things exactly the same. In fact, the beaches and restaurants here in this county were closed longer than Donald Trump wanted them closed.
Okay, interesting. I'm going to go to a couple of questions from the chat. Okay, this person's just being funny. How do we know this isn't a Roger Stone impersonator? I saw your wedding video. That's because I had a Trump impersonator at my wedding. I had the very hilarious Bob DeBono doing a great Trump impression at my wedding. That was great. I highly recommend it. From Daniel Caven, thoughts on Vivek Ramaswamy as a person, genuine or distraction, voting Trump, but curious if he is a plant.
I don't think that he's a plant. He's got some stuff in his background that seems inconsistent with his current positioning as an America First pro-Trump Republican. I saw him explain this away at Palm Beach at the Turning Point USA conference recently, where he said, Soros, they just name you as one of their young leaders, but you don't have to accept that. And I didn't apply for it. And I didn't really participate. I don't know if that's true or not. I think he's running for a cabinet job. I think that he has been very smart to be supportive of Trump in all of his comments, unlike others in the race who've tried to attack Trump and found that that's actually hurt them. This is Donald Trump's party. We're no longer the party of the country clubs. We're no longer the party of the Bushes. I mean, our problem today are not left-wing, crazy Marxist Democrats. Our problem is the weak-kneed, lily-livered, gutless, feckless, white wine swilling, brie cheese eating, country club belonging, Volvo driving, classical music listening, Republican establishment types who have neither guts nor balls. They're just in politics to make money for themselves and their friends. That's our real problem. Better a snake in the grass than an asp in the bosom. Our problem are not the Democrats today. We know where they stand. They're communists. It's the Republicans who don't seem to have the guts to do anything about it that are the real problem.
Yeah, I did appreciate about Vivek that he said, that if he won, he would immediately pardon Trump. So I thought that was a nice sort of good faith gesture there. From Jimmy G,
he's interesting. He's very, very articulate.
Mm-hmm.
I heard him rap the other day. I would not recommend that he rap. I think
rapping. Oh no. From Jimmy G, how does Roger feel about Al Pacino's portrayal of Roy Cohn in Angels in America? I don't know if you've seen that movie. I haven't seen this movie.
I have seen it. I knew Roy. Roy was Donald Trump's lawyer. Actually, that's how I met Donald Trump. I thought Pacino was very good in the role. There's a documentary on Roy that is one of the most vicious hit pieces I have ever seen. Roy was very famously counsel to the Army McCarthy trials. And of course, the narrative of the left is McCarthy was an ogre. He was a boogeyman. Really, read this book, Blacklisted by History by M. Stanton Evans. Everything Joe McCarthy said was correct. The government was riddled by communists under both Roosevelt and Truman. Ann Coulter's quote is saying, "This is the greatest book since the Bible."
Wow. An Ann Coulter endorsement. That's pretty valuable. I love Ann. From the Lost Tales, StoneZone.com. Roger was right about DeSantis for almost 2 years. Saw him on the War Room today with Owen Schroyer. Chrissy, when are you and Gary headed back? Tell Roger we're rooting for him and Alex always. 199. That's their group. And we got Roger Stone supporters in the chat. Good to see. From Push-Ups, you wrote in Nixon's Secrets about Nixon's military airlift to save Israel. How is military support to Ukraine different than support to Israel?
Pretty simple. Israel was the only democracy in the region. Israel was a reliable ally of the United States. The Egyptians and the Syrians mounted a surprise attack on Israel. Israel was completely out of ammunition. They literally had their backs to the Red Sea. Everybody in the U.S. government, Henry Kissinger, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the entire deep state military industrial complex was against Nixon saving Israel. He unilaterally airlifts $36 million worth of lethal aid to Israel, and Israel is saved. Israel, unlike Ukraine, is not a center for child sex trafficking. It is not a center for money laundering. And there was no skim. All $36 million worth of the lethal aid was used to save Israel. Big difference.
For sure. I think even to someone who's not super well read, it seems so obvious at this point that there's money laundering going on in Ukraine. From Russell Hall, FYI, armadillos carry leprosy. Yes, I was listening to something today that potentially blamed armadillos for leprosy, but who knows if that's going to be true. From the Front Porch Conservative, Mr. Stone, since Trump will only have 4 years when he wins in 24, the choice of VP seems critical in order to finish what Trump may not be able to. Who would you suggest for VP? You both are great.
Well, it's a two-part answer. First of all, you need a person who is genuinely qualified to be president of the United States. So if, therefore, God forbid, something happened to Trump, they could fill the role. You also need somebody who brings some voter appeal to the ticket. And therefore, I guess my argument is until you see how the nomination fight unfolds, you can't see how these other candidates perform. If any of them distinguish themselves in this campaign, meaning they handle themselves well under pressure, they demonstrate an ability to roll with the punches, and they understand that the vice presidential candidate can never upstage the presidential candidate, then I think that person might emerge. If I could just wave a wand and pick anyone I liked, I, of course, would take Kari Lake. I love Kari Lake. But I also think the American people would probably say, well, we'd like somebody with some experience in public office. I'd like to see Kari Lake run for the U.S. Senate in Arizona. I think she will win this time. I think she was cheated last time. I don't think that. I know she was cheated. She's got the most talent of anyone I've seen in politics since I worked for Ronald Reagan. She's just a great communicator. She's very skilled. She handles herself extraordinarily well. She's shown grace under great pressure. And I think had she been elected, she would have been the ideal candidate. Now, the mold has been broken. In other words, prior to Donald Trump, every president we had either been a senator, a governor, a congressman, or a general. We never elected a business person president until Donald Trump. Would the American people elect a president and a vice president who'd never served in public office again? Well, Trump has now been president for 4 years, so it's a moot issue as far as he's concerned. But if I could pick anyone I wanted, I would take Kari Lake in a heartbeat. On the other hand, perhaps Kari Lake serves in a Trump cabinet or serves in the U.S. Senate. But I will say this, Kari Lake will be president someday.
Wow. Who do you see? I know there was an issue of maybe people surrounding Trump, in his presidency that maybe he couldn't trust you. How do you feel about, that being an issue again, when he wins in 2024? Do you think he's learned lessons from his first go round?
Very definitely. So I think that he didn't come from the world of politics. And candidly, I think he was very naive in a sense. And then he thought that when he got to Washington, there's two teams, right? There's the Republicans and the Democrats. And the Republicans will rally around me the way they rallied around Reagan. Reagan was an outsider. He was not the choice of the Washington Republican establishment. He beat them to win the nomination. But they rallied around him, had a very successful 8-year presidency. They tried to take him out with Iran-Contra. Those are the same people who took Nixon out in a silent coup, who took John F. Kennedy out in a bloody coup, who tried to take Donald Trump out in the Russian collusion hoax and then the Ukrainian hoax, which we now know the entire Ukrainian impeachment was a cover-up for the fact that Joe and Hunter Biden did each get $5 million from Burisma, which was the payoff for Joe using his influence to get the prosecutor who was investigating Burisma and Hunter Biden fired. Trump was right about this all along. So I think that you are in a situation in which Trump didn't really understand that half the Republicans who really are, swamp creatures were never really for him. In a second, that said, despite the fact that he did appoint some really bad people, I can't think of anybody. I don't want to name any names. Rod Rosenstein. I don't want to point fingers. Bill Barr. I don't want to point out any rats. Jim Comey. I don't think he's going to make those mistakes again. I think you have now a fully awake Donald Trump. But even Trump with some of his questionable appointments, gave you the most robust economy in American history, record job creation, record wage growth, the lowest levels of unemployment in history, billions of dollars coming back into the country to be invested here, to create jobs here, appointed tens of actually hundreds of conservatives to the courts at all levels of the federal government, rebuilt our military strength, and he had a certain unpredictability, which in the world of foreign affairs is an amazing asset. In other words, Putin would never have invaded Ukraine. The Chinese would never move on Taiwan because Trump told them to their face, if you try it, I'm going to nuke you.
Wow, really? Oh my God. I didn't know he said that. I mean, it would make sense for why there was so much respect.
Well, as Trump tells it, he said, look, I told Vladimir, if you do that, I'm going to hit Moscow with everything we have. And Putin said, you will not do that. And Trump said, don't try me. And he said, Putin didn't know if maybe there was a 10% chance that I would, but he wasn't going to take any chances. And he never really moved on Ukraine.
Wow.
Once they saw the weakness in Afghanistan and they saw Biden withdraw our men and women, they saw 13 Americans die. They saw us leave literally billions of dollars of sophisticated military equipment in the country to be seized by the Iranians, who immediately shipped it to the Chinese so it could be knocked off. They could steal our technology. Everybody around the world, the Chinese, the North Koreans, they all figured out that Joe Biden is a patsy. When Secretary of State Blinken went to China 3 weeks ago and suggested that we want to revive the telephone hotline between the Chinese military and our military, the Chinese said, no, thank you. We're not interested. I mean, that's when you saw Janet Yellen bowing down to the Chinese premier. That's completely inappropriate for an American official. So in Joe Biden, these foreign leaders see a patsy. I can tell you, if the Chinese, sadly, if they move on Taiwan, what they're going to get from Joe Biden is a strongly worded letter of protest. And that's about it.
And he might fall up another flight of stairs. From Matthew Hammond, would Democrats have not been better off letting Trump win in 2020? They could have saddled him with the bad economy and real estate market.
I think that unfortunately for them, perhaps, had he been allowed to take office in 2020, because I, of course, believe that he did win, I don't think you would have had the soft economy or the bad real estate market, because the fundamentals would not have changed. Trump not only once, but twice built a model economy. There's no reason to believe that he couldn't have kept it going. So I think that they have made a monumental mistake, and we're now all paying the price for it.
Yeah, I see a lot of concerns about, election, and I think I heard something a couple months ago, like, well, Republicans need to really embrace the mail-in ballots as much as the Democrats did, and really push that. Like, do you see that at all making a difference?
I think that is one tiny element of the answer. Ballot harvesting alone is not going to solve the problem. We need to use sophisticated technology, and we need to be on our toes legally to ensure that only people who are legally registered to vote and eligible to vote actually vote. Sadly, in 2020, we were completely taken by surprise. And when they basically say, oh, all the Republican observers have to leave, you have to say no, and you have to get in front of a judge as quickly as possible. So they took us to the cleaners because we were not prepared. We were not legally nor technically prepared. I interviewed a guy named Jay Valentine on my show StoneZone.live recently, who demonstrated how you could use technology to analyze these voting lists and track every voter in real time. It's a little complicated to explain here, but that is part of the answer. Ballot harvesting is a slogan to try to get you to send money to the Republican National Committee so we can get the Republican National Chairwoman a better hairdresser, more five-star hotel suites, and a private jet. I would never in a million years send money to the Republican National Committee. Pick individual men and women you like who are running for office, individual candidates. send your money directly to them. Giving money to the party gets used in massive overhead, massive compensation for consultants who, if you ever met, you would hate, or it gets used against the candidates that you like in primaries and inter-party contests. So I think this whole ballot harvesting thing, it sounds cool, but it's a meme. It's only a small part of the process. It's only a small part of the fix, in my opinion.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. Now we have so much of the insane Biden family corruption coming to light. Devin Archer, who was Hunter's former business partner, came out and said, a lot of damning testimony. I feel like he admitted to the fact that Hunter had his dad Joe Biden on speakerphone 20 plus times, and then you have Democrats coming out and saying, well, like you said earlier, he was just talking about the weather. It's like, well, then why call in at all if you're just going to say hi and talk about humidity? I just don't feel like people are believing that at all. It's so obvious to me, the weaponization of the DOJ that's been going on, and that Joe has been super involved in Hunter's business. It seems like he's being caught in a lot of lies. Do you think this will make any difference at all? And it's just so interesting, the possibility that we could have two candidates running against each other, one in Biden that's potentially going to be impeached, and one in Trump who is just saddled with criminal trials.
I do think it'll make a difference. I think we're in an information war. They would like to change the subject. That's why they've charged Donald Trump. They would like to distract attention from these startling, I would say shocking revelations. By the way, I thought that Adam Schiff was the biggest con man, huckster, bullshit artist, congenital liar who ever served in Congress. But I was wrong. This guy, Dan Goldman, is even worse. So, I mean, this guy is just a total fraud. So he says, oh, well, yeah, Devin said that Hunter got his father on the phone, but it was just really to say hi and talk about the weather. Sure, who among us in the middle of a business meeting with our foreign partners doesn't get their dad on the phone just to say hi to the boys? Please give me a break. This guy, and then they asked him, well, Biden said that he never was involved in Hunter's business. And Goldman said, no, he never said that. Sorry, Dan. It's exactly what he said. You're just another con artist.
It seems like a lot. It just seems like so much is coming out. And
let me put it to you this way. Dan Goldman, when it comes to lying, makes Adam Schiff look like George Washington. It's that bad.
Do you think these revelations will make a difference on like the American public very much? Do you think this makes a difference, or do you think most people have sort of counted Biden out for the next election anyhow? And it's just, I get the sense from just, reading what people are saying on Twitter and talking to friends, like a lot of people are just getting to an apathetic place when it comes to trust in our institutions and really everything. It's dangerous, because you never want to get to a place where you just don't care, because then you're not voting, then you're not trying, which I feel like is what a lot of people would like. The powers that be would like us sort of apathetic and not participating.
I guess I'd say two things. One, when you consider the enormous load of crap that they've dumped on Trump, and the fact that they still control most of the media platforms. And by the way, just so you know, I'm banned for life on Instagram. I'm banned for life on Facebook. I'm banned for life on YouTube.
Oh, no.
I'm banned for life on TikTok. The last one I don't so much care about, because I really don't need the red Chinese, inside my phone. But beyond that, so I'm very grateful to Elon Musk to be back on Twitter. You can find me at Roger J. Stone Jr., Roger J. Stone Jr. on Twitter. Sign up now. I guarantee you that you'll find it entertaining. I'm also on Truth Social at Real Roger Stone. Now, people always say to me, well, how come you don't have the same handle in both places? And the answer is because there's some other guy at Truth Social who is squatting my real name and won't give it up. But, so I'm essentially still banned. This is very cool. My wife, who is just recovering from stage 4 cancer and is doing extraordinarily well, thanks to the healing power of Jesus Christ and the support of many Americans, because we lost most of our insurance during the Mueller witch hunt. We lost our home, our car, our savings, my ability to travel, my ability to make a living. It was a 2-year,
Yes.
2 years in hell, to say the least. But I think stress is a great triggerer for cancer, and she's doing extraordinarily well. But she had an Instagram feed, which she really didn't spend much time, and she very rarely posted. Then about 2 weeks ago, when I spoke to Turning Point USA, somebody made a reel. She posted it, and overnight it had like 1.5 million views and 65,000 likes. And she said, wow, this is really cool. So then a couple of days later, she put up a second reel, and this time it had 600 views and 21 likes, which means the algorithm immediately said, oh, Roger Stone, we need to block this. It's really pathetic. Instagram really is pathetic, but the censorship continues. It's just that some platforms like Twitter, and that's not perfect to say the least, but by and large, I think there are more diverse voices being allowed there. People like to attack Elon. People like to criticize him. I can't criticize the way I've been treated. I've been treated extraordinarily well.
What got you banned off Instagram?
I have no idea. They never tell you.
Just
so in other words,
living. Yeah.
What happened was the day that the D.C. Circuit Court upheld my conviction for lying about Russian collusion that we now know actually never happened. Chrissy, think about that for a second. How do you lie about something that never really happened? The government never produced any evidence that I colluded with any Russians or that I collaborated with WikiLeaks. The whole thing was just to pressure me to testify falsely against Donald Trump. When I refused, a D.C. court was determined to make sure I died in prison. I didn't do anything wrong. There's actually a great T-shirt that says that. Roger Stone did nothing wrong. If you want one of those T-shirts, you can go to stonezone.com in the store and you can get one. And someday you'll be able to sell it to the Smithsonian for, I don't know, millions of dollars. But but in the meantime, Graphica, which is some lefty research group funded by George Soros, says that Stone had hundreds of fake Facebook profiles. There it is. You can get one of those great stores, one of those great T-shirts by going to stonezone.com, go to the shop. Stone had dozens of fake Facebook profiles. I didn't have any. I had a personal one. I had one for my Stone Zone blog. I had one for each of the 5 books that I've written: The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ, The Bush Crime Family, The Clintons' War on Women, and so on. And then unilaterally, because the people who own Facebook also own Instagram, I was just banned for life on Instagram without any explanation. I didn't break their Fugazi community standards because they don't have any. They make them up as they go along. I was never even given a reason why I was banned on Facebook. They just unilaterally decided that I would be a non-person. The only person in the world who's more banned than I am is Laura Loomer. And
Wow.
and it's a contest at this point because she's still on YouTube. She's still on YouTube, and I'm banned for life on YouTube. By the way, they don't give you a reason. They just cancel you. So I used to have a platform at called Stone Cold Truth on YouTube, and this one day, boom, gone, just gone. No explanation, no email, no sorry, no wham bam, thank you, ma'am, nothing. By the way, you can find me on Rumble at stonezone.com or Roger Stone /Rumble, whatever it is. You can
Good.
tell Martinis are getting to me.
Yes, you can find him on Rumble, on Truth. Yes, thank you to Daddy Musk for giving Roger his Twitter account back. And I think it's been made really obvious. I think most people at this point know of of just the amount of collusion between Facebook and the FBI, and it was basically doing the direct bidding of the Biden administration. So a lot of people are aware of really how compromised Facebook was. And of course, Instagram. I had an Instagram account deleted. I was posting photos of herbs during the pandemic, and they claimed that I was trying to push like alternate COVID cures. It was absurd. So
I saw a great lecture by Michael Schellenberg, who's a investigative journalist, gave a lecture at some very prestigious forum, and he exposed all these lies that he saw firsthand when he covered the Twitter files. Now, he's, I guess you'd call him a former liberal. Maybe he still considers himself a liberal, but his entire lecture was shocking because he just went through all of the lies being told to us by the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal and CNN and MSNBC. I don't get my news from CNN for the same reason I don't eat out of the toilet. If you know
Your palate is a little bit more refined than that. For those of you who don't know, who are new to Roger Stone, he actually has a Nixon tattoo on his back. Do you want to share the story of why you decided to get that for a tattoo?
It's very simple. It's true that I have a tattoo of Richard Nixon on my back. It's about the size of a pineapple. It's just his head, his face, right between my shoulder blades, which means I'm actually the only person you know with a dick on the front and the back.
Wow.
But it's not a political statement. What it is, because of his career, is a daily reminder that in life, when things don't go your way, when you're knocked down, when you suffer defeats and setbacks, when you really strive for something you want, but you fall short again and again, that's when you have to get yourself up off the mat, dust yourself off, and get back in the fight. Because Nixon's story is a story of persistence and resilience, and therefore it's a very American story. So to me, it's just a reminder that you never, never, never give up. Man's not finished when he's defeated. He's only finished when he quits. The greatness comes not when things go always good for you, as he said, but when you take some knocks, when you suffer some defeats, when sadness comes. Because until one has been in the deepest valley, one cannot appreciate the majesty of the highest mountaintop. That's why I have a tattoo of Richard Nixon on my back.
If you were going to get another is that your only tattoo right now?
It is, but here's what I've been thinking about, right?
Okay.
I add Reagan, Goldwater, Trump, and probably Bill Buckley, and I do like a whole Mount Rushmore thing on my God, would that hurt? This hurt.
Yeah. That hurt, really?
Oh man, I was so drunk it was ridiculous.
Oh no. Where'd you get it done?
I had it done in Venice Beach, California on my birthday. And I had quite a bit to drink. So that's when I decided to do it. And then I had to find like the right tattoo artist. And I kept going from tattoo shop and I kept saying, show me a sample of your work. Show me a portrait you've done. Show me a portrait of somebody. And I couldn't find anybody who'd done a portrait. I saw a lot of cool ink, but I couldn't find a portrait. And I finally found a French guy, a French artist, and he'd done a portrait of General George Patton for somebody. He showed me a picture of it. And I said, wow, you are the guy. And he did my Nixon tattoo, and the rest is history.
If you were going to get another tattoo today, what would you get?
I kind of like that idea of Goldwater, Reagan, and Trump.
Okay.
Adding them to Nixon,
Yeah.
the Mount
Rushmore.
You know.
not like a meat lover's pizza or something.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, some people said, would you get a tattoo of Alex Jones? The answer to that is no.
No, that would not look good.
I agree.
Oh, interesting. I love you posted on your Twitter feed a small snippet, a small video of you telling Trump in April of 2022, you were actually warning him about DeSantis. I'll play a little snippet of it.
How could I not see
Did I turn out to be right or not? This was in the period I was talking about when I said he's going to challenge you from president. And everybody kept saying to me, no, you're wrong. You and Laura Loomer are both wrong. No, we were absolutely right. He's turned out to be an epic backstabber, and it's very, very unfortunate.
Did he believe you at the time, or was he just
I think he went through phases. So phase one was, this guy's not going to run against me. I made him. Phase two was, I think this guy is thinking about running against me. Phase three was, damn it, this guy's running against me. Phase four was, I'm going to destroy this guy. And that's where we are today. Trump, I think, very famously has a long history of reconciling with people that he falls out with. But I don't think that will be the case with Ron DeSantis. I think he sees this as a personal act of treachery because the story he tells is true. Ron came to him on bended knee with tears in his eyes, begging for an endorsement. Otherwise, his campaign for governor would have crashed and burned. Now this week, I see Ron saying Trump actually held him back in 2018, that he could have won without Trump. In fact, he would have won bigger if Trump didn't endorse him. That's delusional. That's truly crazy.
Do you think DeSantis has support that necessarily doesn't really support him, but just doesn't want Trump to win?
There's no question. I think he is suddenly, Jeb Bush was not at his first inauguration. How come Jebby just happened to pop up at the second inauguration and has a front row seat? All this globalist money that has come out of nowhere. Here, this is Ron's real problem. The average donation to his campaign is somewhere around $1,500. So he has a very small number of very large donors, where Trump has a very large number of very small donors. The large donors, many of them are maxed out, meaning they can't give again. They've given the legal maximum. So based on his current burn rate, even making deep cuts in his payroll, I've done a quick back of the envelope analysis, he will be completely and totally out of money by October 1st. And I don't think he has the financial donor base to find more because he doesn't have any more small donors who can give more. Whereas Trump thrives on the $25, $50, $75, $100, $200 donor. He has several 100,000 donors. That number continues to grow. Those who have given before will give an average of 8 to 10 times. And I think now that he's been indicted, he's going to raise another $10, $12 million in the next couple of days. Watch.
Wow. Yeah. He truly just does seem like the underdog, which is, amazing. I'm excited to see how things pan out. Any other closing predictions, thoughts, feelings?
Look, I still believe in the end that good wins, that good triumphs over evil. It is absolutely true that I rededicated my life to Jesus Christ when I was in the valley, when it was clear that I was not going to get a fair trial, that I was going to be lynched, even though I'd done absolutely nothing wrong. And therefore, people say to me, well, how do we get out of this? Things look very dark. Things do look dark. But Trump is an inspiration. I mean, I must tell you, I traveled with him for 4 days 2 weeks ago. We were in New Jersey, then we were in Iowa, then we were in Nevada, then we were in California, back to New Jersey. He's 77 years old. I'm 70. I know I look like I'm 45, but I'm 70. And he left me in the dust. And this guy gets up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Your cell phone's ringing at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. He's ready to go. You do a rally in Iowa. Then you fly to Las Vegas. He goes to his hotel suite. He eats dinner. Then he goes to 4 dinners. He's already eaten, so he can talk at each of the dinners. He goes to 4 individual dinners. At 11:30 at night, he's back in his suite calling you on the phone or calling you to the suite for a business meeting to plot out what you're going to do the next day. His energy level, his stamina is really amazing, but it's more than that. It's his attitude. In other words, somebody under this kind of attack, you can see how they might wilt. You can see how they might become dejected or depressed or angry or downtrodden. That's not him at all. I mean, his humor is very good. He's very determined. He's very resilient. His mood is really good. It's always fun to be with him. I really think he's a happy warrior, even under these circumstances. In fact, I would tell you, he's at his very best in crisis. He's at his very best when he's, when he's in the battle, when he's on the attack. And if you saw his True Social tonight, he was definitely on the attack.
Oh, yeah. He's great under pressure. And he's had boundless energy. I mean, that was one of the first things I learned about him when he first won. I'd hear he'd just be like eating McDonald's and up early and then up late and just he's a machine. So
yeah, his diet is a little questionable,
Does he drink? What's his favorite drink?
Never had a drink in his entire life. Never even a glass of wine. Not even a glass of wine. He's never had alcohol. He's never smoked a cigarette. Needless to say, he's never smoked a joint. I'm not sure he even knows what marijuana smells like. I mean, he's a complete teetotaler. He's always been that way.
Wow. Well, it's working for him.
He had an older brother who was a great hero to his. Both Donald was an amazing athlete, as was his older brother. His brother ultimately died of alcoholism, died of cirrhosis.
Oh, wow.
And that's why Donald Trump has never touched a drop of alcohol.
That definitely makes sense. Everybody follow Roger Stone right now. Check out the stonezone.com. Follow him on Twitter at Roger J. Stone Jr. Follow him on Truth Social at Real Roger Stone, on Gab at Roger J. Stone Jr. Check out his shop. Buy one of his books. Buy a t-shirt. Yes, peruse. There's Stone's Rules, Bush Crime Family, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Clintons' War on Women, The Myth of Russian Collusion. So many. My goodness, I can't believe how many books you've written. A personally hand-signed presidential pardon. Wow, that's fun. I should get one of those.
Yes, my book Stone's Rules has an introduction by my good friend Tucker Carlson. This is a book, doesn't matter whether you're a conservative or a liberal, Republican, Democrat, whether you're in tech or fashion or agriculture. Doesn't matter what your avocation is. These are kind of rules for life. You don't even have to be political to benefit from this book. It's kind of lighthearted. I think you'll enjoy it. It's kind of like a combination of Sun Tzu's The Art of War and Machiavelli's The Prince. I think people find it instructional as well as entertaining.
I love it.
And of course, all my books, when you go to stonezone.com, they're all personally signed. Now, you can go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble. If you want to give money to multinational corporations who hate your guts, you can go there, or you can go to stonezone.com in the shop and get a signed copy.
Definitely get a signed copy. That sounds good. Thank you, Roger, so much for your time. Thanks for joining me tonight. This was a really interesting conversation. I think the chat really enjoyed it too. And I'll see you next time. This was great. Thanks, Roger.
Thanks, Chrissy. Many thanks.